If we could just avoid another direct hit, I mean, that would be super. This is a 70-year-old man on a spaceship in the future, speaking like a 33-year-old female gender studies major. Normally, Stephen Miller, the White House Homeland Security Advisor, spends his time focusing on major issues facing this country and the world at large, like removing illegal aliens from the U.S., purchasing Greenland, deposing South American communists, and so on. But every now and then, Stephen Miller weighs in on topics that, at least on the surface, and also several layers below the surface, don't seem quite as important. So, for example, the other day, Miller offered his assessment of the new Star Trek show on Paramount Plus called Starfleet Academy. And here's what Miller wrote. Not exactly a flattering review, but here's what he said. Tragic, but it's not too late for Paramount Plus to save the franchise. Step one, reconcile with William Shatner and give him total creative control. Now, Shatner, who of course played Captain Kirk in the original show, responded, and he said this, I'm on the same page with you, Stephen Miller. Shatner also called out some abysmal oversights by the writers and wrote, quote, shame on the line producers. I'm ready to assume command of the series. Now, seeing this exchange, it occurred to me that this new Star Trek show is an ideal target for a deep dive, sort of like the one we did Thanksgiving week with Ken Burns' documentary about the American Revolution. And that's not because anyone should care about a new streaming show that's, total garbage. Those are a dime a dozen. Well, except that these garbage streaming shows somehow cost like $100 million to make, so it's more like $1.2 billion a dozen, I guess, but I digress. The reason we should talk about the state of Star Trek as a franchise, and the reason Stephen Miller probably chimed in, is that it's a useful window into what the modern left has become and where they went wrong and how to defeat them. And on top of that, some of the scenes in this new show are genuinely hilarious, unintentionally, of course, and it will be highly enjoyable to mock them. And also, as a certified Trekkie, I am more than qualified to weigh in here. I've been watching Star Trek ever since the days when Frodo and Hermione were battling Doctor Doom on the Death Star, so I know a lot about this series. I know a lot about the lore behind it. I have a lot of respect for it. Now, yes, it's true that Star Trek began in the 1960s as a progressive, liberal show by the standards of the day, and they weren't exactly subtle with the messaging about equality. They had a black woman on the bridge serving as a communications officer, which was unusual at the time. And by the time the movies came out, the writers decided that in the Star Trek universe, there was no money. Everyone just worked for free to improve mankind. It was like a communist utopia. But in those early communist Star Trek shows, there were still some elements that you would describe, at least by modern standards, as right-wing. Everybody in the crew was physically fit, which you'd expect from the crew of a military vessel. There was no body positivity movement going on. The leaders were all highly competent, decisive men. The officers talked to one another like serious people who understood the gravity of their positions. As the author Isaac Young put it, Star Trek's beating heart was a professional 19th century naval crew in space. It was basically a love letter to right-wing aristocracy and professionalism with a left-wing coat of paint. And you can literally pinpoint the exact second it died by the BMI of the cast. And more importantly, the old Star Trek shows explicitly rejected the idea that everybody is a blank slate. Every species on the ship was distinct in significant ways. According to my producers, who wouldn't lie to me about something like this, the Klingons were the warriors who were obsessed with honor and violence. The Vulcans were cold and unemotional, but highly logical. The Ferengi were scheming and untrustworthy, and so on. Ferengi sound to me like some kind of parasitic infection you pick up in an African jungle, but apparently they're an alien species in Star Trek. The point is that these differences weren't inherently good or bad. They were just unavoidable, consistent differences. That's how liberals and most communists, including Gene Roddenberry, the creator of the series, used to view the world. They recognized differences between large groups of people, and they wrote a show about those people, getting along sometimes. But new Star Trek, like modern leftists, takes a very different approach. They enforce the fiction of blank slateism, meaning that everybody starts life with a blank slate. And under this worldview, no particular demographic has any inherent advantage or disadvantage over another. We're all the same. We're just molded by our environment. Now, this is unscientific and factually obviously wrong, but it's a core tenet of modern leftism. And that's why at every opportunity, Starfleet Academy on Paramount Plus takes pains to push this blank slatist lie. For example, no longer are Klingons a warrior race that are fixated on honor and warfare. Instead, they're now into science and, for some reason, bird watching.
I see you declared early. Molecular biology and regenerative therapies. Do no harm's not a phrase you hear a whole lot in Klingon.
And why do you not yearn for the honor of a valiant death in battle like the rest of our kind, Cadet Krach?
Because I yearn for a valiant life, Cadet Master. I watch birds. My mother, she taught me to see the beauty in things.
Nice.
I can't believe that's a real show. It's real. So, and you can already see that racial diversity was very, very important to the writers of the show. Unfortunately, writing was not important to the writers of the show. A lot of people have accused Starfleet Academy of having bad acting, which it does. But you can't blame the actors. I mean, think about the dialogue here. Okay, think about the dialogue. One character says, I watch birds. They're beautiful. And then the other says, nice. How did that, an actual writer who writes scripts, a screenwriter, wrote that dialogue? And it passed through all the producers and everything that had. Many people touched this script, and every single one of them looked at that line of dialogue. I watch birds. They're beautiful. Nice. Every single one of them looked at that and said, that's great dialogue. Yeah, we need that in the show. We need to film that. We need that scene in this show. It's got to be in there. In the first episode. What do you want an actor to do with that? I mean, you tried delivering those lines in an award-winning way. Daniel Day-Lewis could not elevate that material. It's impossible. But at least it really subverts your expectations to have a gay bird-watching Klingon. And more to the point, it completely erases anything unique about the entire race. And of course, the people who are writing this trash, the people who are going out of their way to turn traditionally masculine characters into effeminate bird watchers, are women. A large portion of the writing staff of the show, including the lead writer and showrunner, are women. And we've talked about this before, how all of these terrible shows, like almost all of them, are just written by women. Women took over all these jobs, and then the quality just cratered into the earth. And what they're showing us now is exactly how liberal women see the world in 2026. For instance, judging by the show, liberal women still haven't recovered from Donald Trump's first term, which we know. I mean, not just from the show, but just turn on the news. They're still very upset about the fact that when parents commit crimes, they're separated from their children. In fact, that's the plot device that Starfleet Academy uses in order to put the entire show in motion. The show begins with the villain, a white guy, of course, played by Paul Giamatti, who is way, way too talented to be here. This is the one emotional reaction I got from watching the first episode is deep sadness when Paul Giamatti shows up. Like Paul Giamatti on Starfleet Academy. It's like if Marlon Brando was still alive and played the villain on the 5th season of Stranger Things, opposite a bunch of actors who wouldn't get the job if they auditioned for a high school play. So anyway, Giamatti, who must be working to pay off some serious gambling debts or something, plays a character who's working with an impoverished woman to commit a space robbery. And a Starfleet officer is ultimately murdered during the robbery. And by any measure, this crime means that both Paul Giamatti and the mother should go to prison for a very long time. Instead, they throw the book at Giamatti, and the mother has to go to rehab. Rehab for committing felony murder. That's an extremely lenient sentence for the mother by any measure. She commits robbery and murder, and her sentence is to talk about her feelings. But the show immediately tells us that, in fact, the sentence is a great travesty of justice. And that's because the mother, in order to go to rehab, has to be separated from her child, who's taken into custody of Starfleet. The Starfleet woman who issues the sentence, played by Holly Hunter, who's very difficult to understand when she talks. This is also like another problem with being a character in a show, or certainly a leadership position on a spaceship. But she comes to regret it. She has a full-on meltdown about it. She quits her job in Starfleet, becomes a teacher. And that leads to this remarkable scene where a high-ranking officer tries to convince her to go back to work. This is one of the most cliched kinds of scenes in shows like this. But usually in a show, this is the scene where it's like a grizzled old, assassin or something, or military commander, like Liam Neeson. And we got to go, and there's a really bad guy out there, and we got to go find him and kill him. But there's only one guy who can do it, and it's got to be you. We need you to come back for one last rodeo. That's usually how it goes. And you can kind of tell in the world of the show why they feel like this is the only guy who can do this. I mean, it's Liam Neeson. But in this case, the person they need is this just like small, petite, blonde woman. We need you. No one else can do this. And anyway, here's how that scene goes.
Anyone here a captain who resigned in disgrace? Oh, wait, that's me.
A captain who resigned because we separated a mother and child.
I separated them.
You didn't have a choice.
No. Here's the thing. I did. I could have refused. Pulled some kind of bait and switch with the prosecution, taking the heat later.
It wouldn't have changed anything. We were in Tria. Starfleet wasn't making any exceptions.
Separating children from their parents isn't exceptional. It's reprehensible.
So you resigned. Because you still remember how the Federation used to be and felt we weren't living up to our principles.
Don't make me pure of heart.
A lot of people agreed with you.
Well, you didn't.
I was dead wrong, Mel.
There's so many things about these modern shows that just like none of it is right. It all just none of it works, and sometimes in ways that it's not even immediately clear. There's a lot of ways where it doesn't work and it's clear why. But then the other thing you notice is that all these shows are written by women, not just women, but liberal millennial women. And so the characters, even if they're older or if they're supposed to exist in the future or whatever, they speak with with the kind of affectation and the sarcasm of a liberal millennial woman. So that's where we get the line where she goes, "You ever hear of a disgraced captain? Oh, wait, that's me." So it's like, that doesn't even make sense for a woman of that age to be speaking that way. And also, another way to date the show, everyone can tell that they wrote this a decade ago. The left doesn't pretend to care about family separations anymore. Remember when that was the big thing? They're separating families. Now they're not even doing that anymore. They're just straight up admitting that, in their view, any enforcement of immigration law is wrong, period. Even if you're deporting individual grown men who have no families and are also sex offenders, that we also are against, they've said now. So they've dropped the pretext of being outraged by family separations. But in Star Trek, apparently, they're still hung up about the fact that if you murder someone, you'll get separated from your family. If you have a child, you should be able to commit any crime you want, according to liberal women. Even though liberal women also think that it's okay to kill your child. So the worst thing in the world is to separate a child from his mother, unless you just kill the child, in which case that's okay. So that's their position. And then we learn that, in fact, the entire show is going to be a power fantasy for the white liberal woman who's been frozen in a time capsule since 2017. The white female captain decides to track down the child 15 years later, offer him a career in Starfleet, even though by that point he's become a criminal himself. Watch.
When you and your mother were separated.
Separated? Is that what you tell yourself?
That is not what I tell myself. I tell myself, we made a horrible, catastrophic decision that robbed you and your mother of a future. So I quit, and I've been looking for you every single day for the last 15 years.
So this is the dream of every leftist woman who voted for Kamala Harris. They dream of, breaking oppressed, multiracial, illegal aliens and other criminals out of prison. They're real fantasy. It's all played out right there. Is everything that a liberal white woman wants. You break a non-white illegal immigrant out of jail and then apologize to them. That's the ultimate fantasy for a liberal white woman. Everything they want in life, right there. You break the dangerous black criminal out of jail and immediately apologize. And of course, in this show, spoiler alert, the multiracial criminal saves the ship in the end. So he reprograms, it's like he reprograms the villain's goo that's like eating the ship alive or something like that. It's weird. So he's a genius in addition to being a criminal. He's far smarter than any of the professional officers on the ship somehow. All he needed was a better environment and for his mother to get away with murder and everything would be fine. This is the blank slate fantasy that underlies leftism. And at some level, they know it's a fantasy because they don't pretend to take anything in the show seriously. The old shows would at least try to present thoughtful, intelligent content. But throughout Starfleet Academy, the female captain sits in her chair like a cat lady who's lounging at her house watching, reruns of Grey's Anatomy. She keeps the same posture even when the ship is being attacked. And the ship's being attacked, everyone's going to die, and she's curled up on the seat. This is what, that's command posture. That's how you sit when you want to be taken seriously and have everyone respect you. That's how you sit, with your knees up, curled up in the fetal position on the chair. And sometimes she has her glasses on, because to show that she's smart, because in the future they've figured out intergalactic space travel and teleportation, but not optometry. And by the way, speaking of that attack on the ship, the big dramatic moment in the show, it gave us yet another insight into the IQ of the writer's room. So see if you notice anything odd about the dialogue in this scene.
Emergency evasive. Multiple systems overload, Captain. Primary power at 86%.
All remaining
falling.
power to forward shields. Open a channel to Starfleet Command. This is Captain
11%
Otham, the
falling.
USS Athena. Calling Starfleet Command. Repeat.
10%.
USS Athena under attack by the Venari Rock.
9.
Damage to multiple
8%.
decks, Captain, including crew quarters.
Bridge to the doctor. Doctor,
6.
report.
A little busy here, Captain. The explosion damaged our emergency hollow emitters. Medical staff is in short supply right now. From what I can see, there are multiple injuries, both cadet and officers, but no casualties.
Let me know if that changes.
If we could avoid another direct hit, that would be super helpful.
There's the millennial cringe sarcasm again. If we could avoid another direct hit, that would be super. If we could just avoid another direct hit, that would be super. This is a 70-year-old man on a spaceship in the future, speaking like a 33-year-old female gender studies major, graduate, whatever. So they've got a ton of injuries. That wasn't the point, though. They got a ton of injuries on the crew. Things are blowing up. People are seriously hurt. Some senior officers have been impaled, in fact. But on the bright side, there are no casualties. Now, not to nitpick, but somehow through the entire production of this show, none of the 15 executive producers or the 20 writers or the crew members or the actors or the directors picked up on the fact that a seriously injured individual counts as a casualty. Saying we have a number of serious injuries but no casualties is saying we have a number of casualties but no casualties. The show made it all the way through production without a single person noticing that the doctor of the ship doesn't know what a casualty is. Now, a few minutes earlier, when the attack begins, there was another technical error that I'll point out, just because why not? This one, admittedly, it's a little hard to spot, but if you're watching the video version of the podcast, see if you can identify it.
Captain, I'm picking up sources of tachyon interference 100,000 kilometers to port.
Contacts incoming.
Retract our sensors. Red alert. Raise shields. Target those contacts and take them out. Get to the kids.
Okay, so again, not the biggest deal, but they say that the incoming fire is coming from the port side of the ship, and then they cut to the CGI shot where the fire is clearly coming from the starboard side. Now, it's obvious what happened here. The woman writing the show, who was probably all hot and bothered by all the fan fiction she was writing about rescuing a multiracial criminal and turning him into a Starfleet officer, quickly looked up the definition of port, and she learned from ChatGPT, which also wrote most of the script for her, that port means the left side of the ship when facing the front. But for this definition to work, you have to understand that you're facing the front of the ship while facing in the same direction as the bow of the ship. And so you can see in this diagram, port is the red portion of the diagram. So in this CGI shot, the weapons are hitting the starboard section of the ship, not the port. And in a show with any standards, they'd be embarrassed by this. The bridge crew on this ship is supposed to consist of professional, highly trained officers, but they don't know the difference between port and starboard. And of course, the point of modern storytelling in Hollywood, though, isn't to create a realistic environment or believable dialogue. Instead, they're contractually obligated to shoehorn as much leftist ideology as possible into the episode. And to that end, we're introduced to a jerk character among the cadets, who, of course, is played by a white actor. So the villain and the jerk cadet are both white men. But to the extent that white people are portrayed positively in this show, which they very rarely are, they're either salivating over criminals or they're lesbians delivering DEI struggle sessions. So this is from episode 2. It's a viral clip that you may have seen already, but let's enjoy it again. Watch.
Name of this cadet. Being a cadet in Starfleet Academy means being open to the people around you. And that connection is where time and space really live.
I don't need connection.
Yeah. You're a genius who owns all the suffering. I only know 2 things, kid. Number 1, old age and treachery always triumph over youth and a smart mouth. Oscar Wilde. Love that dude. Fun fact, when he died, they had to put glass over his tombstone because people kept trying to make out with it. Number 2, a smart mouth isn't worth a damn.
Oh, the acting is so bad. Now, one thing you immediately notice when you watch these woke streaming shows, aside from the bad dialogue, bad acting, all that, is just how bad they look. Now, putting aside the atrocious ChatGPT dialogue, the wooden, lifeless acting, it just looks cheap, even though they spend more than $10 million an episode. This is one of the weirdest phenomena about modern, you find in modern Hollywood, is that they're spending zillions of dollars making this stuff, and it looks terrible. The stuff looked better 30 years ago. I mean, they had better sets with more character in the 1960s. From the looks of it, it appears they shot the entire season of Starfleet Academy at like a Chuck E. Cheese. And then they hired the employees of Chuck E. Cheese to be the lead actors in the show. Which, okay, that's one way to save money. How did it cost you $10 million an episode? I could have done that for $50,000. Everyone's dropping cash on supplements and gym memberships after holiday indulgences, but completely ignoring the most basic thing, water. Water helps control your energy, focus, and metabolism. And here's the kicker. Most tap water is loaded with PFAs, microplastics, pharmaceutical residue, and fluoride. That's where our sponsor, Cove Pure, comes in. Their clear wave technology removes up to 99.9% of contaminants. So if it isn't H2O, it's gone. I've been using Cove Pure for a few months now and personally love the temperature control it offers. Hot water for coffee, ice cold when I'm thirsty, room temperature for chugging, instant. Setup took maybe 5 minutes with zero installation or drilling, which is perfect for anyone that is renting a home, and it looks great. Cove Pure makes it so easy to get pure water with the push of a button. So this year, make a New Year's resolution that sticks. Improve your health with clean water. Right now, you get $200 off for a limited time if you use my link, covepure.com/Walsh. That's covepure.com/Walsh to start this new year right. Now, the rest of episode 2 isn't much better. They have a telepathic species using sign language for the first time in the show's history as a way to appeal to the deaf community. So yes, in the future, telepaths, who by definition have an extremely advanced system of communication that's beyond human comprehension, are also using sign language, which is just random spastic hand movements that no one, including deaf people, actually understand. They apparently retcon this, changing the way the whole species works just for the sake of, adding in more diversity. Then they spend the rest of the episode telling us that walls are bad and that Donald Trump's a bad man because he built a border wall. And again, parts of the show were definitely written like a decade ago. Then in a more modern touch, they also tell us that the multiracial criminal isn't actually a bad guy because he didn't get due process. So, this is the Kilmar Abrego Garcia reference. Watch.
The Federation allowed me to question standards.
Question or lower them by allowing a criminal into your academy?
You're referring to Cadet Mir. Oh, thank you so much. Those allegations were never subject to judicial review or due process and occurred outside our jurisdiction, so he's not a criminal here.
Yet. Academy admission traditionally includes a 6-week preparatory program, followed by a rigorous entrance exam and intense psychological scrutiny. Was Mir exempt from these?
He passed the exam in the 98th percentile while sitting in the back of a shuttle. I lived in the Janaran Sanctuary and swam in the Opal Sea. Beta-Z was paradise. Some of the bravest, kindest people I've ever met. It seems to me, sir, that you're allowing your walls to define you now.
Now, first of all, even if you commit a crime outside of a jurisdiction, you can still be considered a criminal in that jurisdiction. If a high school student commits some heinous crime in Tokyo and somehow escapes to the United States will still definitely treat him like a criminal. We certainly wouldn't let him into West Point, which is what's basically happening in the show. We'd arrest him and put him on a flight to Japan. And for what it's worth, the telepathic guy actually makes a great point in this scene. You know, we're supposed to think he's obnoxious, but he's actually correct. He points out that Starfleet standards must be pretty low if they're letting a criminal into their highly selective academy because a liberal white woman is attracted to him. And in response, the white liberal captain explains that actually they didn't lower the standards at all. And you see in this leftist fantasy, the multiracial criminal from a broken home has a 98th percentile test score. That's a revealing moment in a few ways. The writers could have said, yeah, he's bad, he's got bad test scores, but he brings other skills to the table. But they insisted on keeping the line about 98th percentile scores so they can have a girl boss gotcha moment where she puts the racist white man, again, another nasty white guy, in his place. And they included this line because even in their fantasies, leftists still recognize that objective standards are important. They just imagine that since everyone's a blank slate, all of their preferred demographic groups are capable of meeting those standards, even though, of course, that's not remotely true. And every streaming service across virtually every show and virtually every genre is just is now full of shows like this. To give just one more example, there's a new Agatha Christie adaptation on Netflix where they introduce a black character who wasn't in the original novel, who lectures all the white people about how Europeans destroyed Africa. Just a constant stream of propaganda, and all of it says the exact same thing. Watch.
And is that the extent of your connections to Germany?
No. I fought for them in the war.
You fought with the Germans?
Yes. I had no choice. The whole of West Africa was engulfed in battles between Germany, France, and England. In Cameroon, we faced troops from Nigeria, the Belgian Congo, French Equatorial Africa. For more than 2 years, Africans fought other Africans on behalf of and led by white Europeans.
Well, then we are grateful for all their and your endeavors.
I lost my entire family. I never want to see anything like that happen again.
Now, they insert dialogue like this where it obviously doesn't belong or make any sense into modern adaptations of classic works of literature. You're trying to watch a mystery series based on a novel from the 1920s. And instead of getting that, you're informed that white people caused all of Africa's problems, which isn't remotely true. And the person telling you this is a Cameroonian scientist, not a German like the original novel, for the simple reason that the writers felt compelled to deliver yet another lecture on colonialism. They really thought that would be compelling to watch. And they've done this to Star Trek. They've done it to Agatha Christie. They've done it to everything. Streaming services are full of this garbage, most of which is based on either fabricated history, in the case of the last thing, bad data, anti-white feminist propaganda, in the case of Star Trek. We put a lot of effort into my show, Real History, for exactly this reason. You can make a very strong case that if more people understood history, then streaming services would have a lot less slop. And that's because in all these shows, the writers see themselves as atoning for past injustices. They believe it's their role to bring about equity because of atrocities that in many cases never actually happened. And audiences, for the most part, or at least the audiences that gravitate to this kind of slop, don't know any better. Particularly if you went to public schools, then no one ever told you the truth. But even if you don't buy that theory, the fact remains that most new streaming shows are unwatchable. They treat you like you have a Somali tier IQ. They beat you over the head with the leftist messaging. Well, Real History, which will continue monthly with new episodes, is my effort to combat this trend. And ultimately, of course, the goal is to end it. And let's hope there are many more similar efforts to come. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.